Hi everyone and welcome back. I was on the underground recently waiting for a train and I saw this film poster, so I took a picture of it to make a mental note for myself to make a quick tutorial on how to produce this textured text effect in Photoshop. I think it looks very effective and it's actually very simple to do. So I will be working with this image. First of all, I'm going to create a text layer and I'm going to type something very simple like dance, for example, and then I can resize this to almost full width of the canvas like this. I can then double click and then I can fine tune this. I can change the tracking to maybe something like -50 like this. And then also if I click between and C, I can change the kerning for 2 letters like this to close this gap between the and C, maybe a little bit less, something like this. And then this will allow me to make the text even larger like this. So I will position it to here somewhere like this and then double click. I can also change the color. I could pick something from the image itself like this, or I could maybe use a contrasting color like this really bright red. I think I prefer something like this. Like this. And then to apply the texture to this text, I took this image. This was a boarded up shop. So this is an MDF board that's been painted over. So it's got an interesting texture. But I think you could try taking pictures of old painted surfaces, pavements, or you could also photograph pieces of paper or cardboard, or you could even photocopy them or scan them as well. All of these would work equally well. So I'm going to duplicate this background layer and pass it to the dance poster file like this. I will then rename this layer to texture just to make it easier to keep track of later on. I will then convert this layer into a smart object in case I want to resize it multiple times or change other tweaks that I'm going to perform on it. So I will then press Command U to desaturate this image because I only want the texture, I don't want the color from it, like this. And I'm also going to press Command M to bring up the curves panel like this, and then I'm going to increase the contrast. Now, because we are working with a smart object, we can actually come back to these later on in case we need to change them. So I'm just going to click OK for now, and then I am going to option click in between of this layer, texture layer, and the dance type layer to clip this layer to the type layer. And then I'm going to change the blending mode of this layer to something like hard light, or I think pin light as the blending mode. So now that we see this texture in place, we could double click on the curves once again and then adjust them until we get the effect that we want, like this. And we could also reduce the opacity, for example, like this, so that the texture is a little bit more subtle. So I'm going to reduce this to, let's say, about 50% like this. And then another thing that I noticed on this poster sample that I photographed, I noticed that on these letters, the tops look a little bit brighter than the bottom of the letter. If you look at this O, I think this area looks much darker than the top. So we could try to recreate this as well. So I'm going to go to Adjustments, create a Curves Adjustment layer, darken the whole thing like this. Again, clip the curves to the texture layer by option clicking between the two. And then I can take the gradient and then draw a gradient like this going upwards. I can also tweak it like this to darken the bottom part of the image. So I can go back, do something like this. And another thing I could do would be to maybe change the blending mode of the gradient too, which would give me a little bit more variety in terms of color. So you can see that there is a very subtle difference now between the top and the bottom. And then another thing that we can do once we have the type and the texture in place, we can actually try to move the texture around. So if you click on it, hold it, you can move it around until you find the part of the image that you like the best. So maybe something like this. And then once again, you can take this idea, change it, tweak it, and make it your own. So once again, this is the text without any texture, and this is the text with the texture applied to it.